But before we get into that, just going to do a quick overview on who BIM Technology Management is. So Marina alluded to, we're partners with EVOLVE MEP. We offer Revit fundamentals training for mechanical, electrical, and plumbing contractors. So if you're interested in trying to get a little bit more prepared with Revit before taking the dive and EVOLVE, we're here to kind of guide you on that journey. And even beyond that, we do consulting and service work and that type of thing as well. All right, so what are Revit schedules? And before I get too far into the presentation and kind of into the demo afterwards, if you have any questions, feel free to drop it in the chat, and I'll try to answer them as we go. So yeah, so what are Revit schedules? It's the way that we tap into the visual or the data within our Revit models. So it could be numerous amount of things. You could be utilizing it for quantity takeoffs or material lists or even sheet lists or quality control or something like that. It's just a way to look at various parameters within our project and kind of sort and filter it down to what we really want to see. So what are the benefits of using Revit schedules? They're huge. They're absolutely huge. I hear from a lot of my clients and even some of my team members that they're really not sure how to use Revit schedules, or they don't really use them. And if you're not utilizing them, you are missing huge within Revit. I use them constantly. It's a way to automate data extractions. I mean, Revit is built to leverage the smart data, and schedules are how we leverage that smart data. So don't utilize text notes and all the workarounds when you could be utilizing a Revit schedule to make that happen. It enhances accuracy and consistency with quality control and checking the data. And you can input a mass amount of data through a schedule with a couple clicks versus trying to find every little instance of that within your project. And then what are the types of Revit schedules? I think the most commonly utilized would be quantities. Some people utilize material takeoffs. It's a little bit more complicated, making sure that your materials are set up right within your projects. There's key schedules, embedded schedules. That would be more like sheet list or a revision schedule within a title block or something like that. And then probably the most commonly used ones would be like a sheet legend that goes on the first sheet or something like that of your cover sheet to show what are all the drawings that are being included in the set. I'm gonna get into kind of the demo side of this now. So I'm gonna go through four main things. And I think these are probably the lowest hanging fruit and most beneficial way to utilize Revit schedules. And number one for MEP contractors is sorting material and length in schedules. So in today's demo, we're gonna kind of go through an electrical example. So we have some equipment and conduit and hangers and some light fixtures and various things in there. So we want to try to pull some of that smart data out. So a lot of times we get asked by the guys in the field, can you give me rough material takeoff? I need to know how many feet of 3-inch PVC I'm ordering or something like that. So the way we would go about doing that would be to go into view, schedules, and then schedules and quantities. So I created this little guy off to the side here just to kind of speed it up a little bit. But when we're doing that, we need to make sure that we're selecting the proper fields. And that's probably half of the challenge when we're creating these schedules, just knowing what data we want to sort. So if I go back to my floor plan view, I can click on a piece of conduit and I can see I have different conduit types. I have different sizes, and all of these pieces of conduit have a length parameter associated to them. So in my schedule here, I want to figure out how many total feet there are of 3-inch IMC or something along those lines. So the way that we would go about doing that is utilizing these tabs off to the side here. So if we go into fields, as I said before, making sure the right fields are in there, and then we would go into sorting and grouping afterwards. So we can sort by type, and then we can sort by size. And then down here, you can see there's a checkbox to itemize every instance. I will show you, I'm gonna leave it checked for now. As you can see, everything's sorted into the proper, or it's sorted by type and then it's sorted by size. So what we're gonna do next is I'm gonna uncheck this itemize every instance. And we get this just more condensed list of all the different types of conduit that are in our entire project. So we have IMC conduit 1.5 through 4 inches, and then PVC, blah, blah, blah. So the big problem now is it says varies. So we need to figure out how we get our total length from that. And the way we do that is if we go into formatting and length, and this is kind of one of the most overlooked things here. Right now, it's set to no calculation by default. We can change that to calculate totals, and as soon as we hit OK, we have a total length of conduit, not including fittings, for all of these various types within our project. So you can very quickly get a running count of how many linear feet of conduit we have, and that could be ducts or pipes or anything else. And that is probably one of the lowest hanging fruits as far as utilizing that data. One of the other most commonly asked things that I get on the electrical side is quantifying things. So the same way I went and set up a conduit schedule, I set up a lighting fixture schedule. And very similarly, we just have a couple different parameters in here to utilize. One's type and one's count. So right now we can see, similar to before, in my sorting and grouping, it comes up as it's not sorted and it's not grouped by default. I want to change that to sort by type. And then I'm going to uncheck itemized every instance. And right there, we can get a quick count of every single light fixture in this project and the total number that there are. So you can see A2, there's 3 of them, C10E, there's 13 of them, etc. Going back, so we hit sorting and length totals, we hit quantity of elements. Finding missing elements in QCing is one of the biggest gains that I see from a quality control standpoint. There's so many reasons why something could be hidden in a view or missing. Could be a filter, could be somebody hid the elements in view or something along those lines. A lot of times we know that it's placed in the project, but trying to find it is really difficult. So a lot of times in my project, I'll set up what I call panel finder schedules or quality control schedules. So I developed or I created an electrical equipment schedule here. And in this electrical equipment schedule, I just added type, the middle verification, depth, height, and width, just so I can very quickly see the size and the panel name for every single one of these. I set this one up as missing panel. If I click on it and I go back into my floor plan, you can see that something's selected, but I can very quickly figure out where that panel is, sorry. Instead of trying to search around and go into a 3D view and look for it and trying to manually find it and trying to track that thing down could take forever. But going back to this electrical equipment schedule, and then clicking this thing, and then clicking back into your floor plan, it'll select it right away. The other option is if it's not in that floor plan, you can go back into that schedule, and then there's this button right here that says highlighted model, and it does kind of the same thing. It opens up a view and it shows you right there. And then, like I said, I also use this view for quality control as well. So instead of clicking on every single panel and hitting edit type and looking at dimensions, although that's a light fixture, looking at dimensions here, we can just develop a schedule to do this very quickly. So I could go through all of my panel submittals all at once and verify, okay, depth is 3 foot, height is 7.6, width is 3 foot. That checks off, that submittal is verified, bam. And as you hit this checkbox here, we're actually, what that's doing is it's actually going into your type properties right here and checking that checkbox here. So if we had multiple of the same, if you had multiple of that same type in the project, you could verify all of them all at once. As you can see, I checked this one, those got verified as well. So if they were different sizes, we would definitely need to make sure that we sorted those out. But I can go in here, and similar to before, I can sort by type and hit the uncheck to itemize every instance. And now you can see. All right, let's see. So the last thing I'm going to go through today is sorting and, I can't spell apparently, filtering data. When we're creating conduit fitting schedules, a lot of times, a lot of categories or a lot of elements get lumped into that category of conduit fittings. So when we look at a schedule like this, it's an absolute mass amount of data. So I went through and I kind of looked at some of the various parameters within the trapeze family that Evolve has, and tried to filter down to figure out what it was that I want to see exactly. So reading their parameters here, we can see that there's T1, T2 parameters, there's rod lengths, and other kinds of things that we'd want to see here. If I go into edit type, and I can see some other data down here. So Evolve does a great job with their families of categorizing things in different ways. So we have hangers, and then they have 2-tier trapeze, and even more if you want to go further down that way. So we can tap into that to filter out data so that those schedules are a little bit more clear and concise and exactly what we want to see. So I can go into filters here, and I can filter by Evolve category, and we can say that we want it to equal hangers. So as soon as I hit OK, you can see that that list dramatically decreases. However, there's still things in here that we don't necessarily want to see. Evolve has, I don't want to go too far down to a rabbit hole here, but Evolve has subcomponents that are shared built into their hanger family. So you can schedule the hanger as a whole, or you can schedule those subcomponents as well. So here you can see like 3-inch 2-tier assembly or 2-tier trapeze with hardware. We want to look at the trapeze as a whole for this instance and not some of these different little pieces. So to do that, we can go back in here and we can go back into our filter, and then I'm going to actually go into the subcategory, and I am going to say contains trapeze. And then you can see that this this list is condensed down to just the data that I want to see. And right now it's still kind of sorted goofy, so I need to come back in here, and then I'm going to sort by subcategory. and then by T1 length, and by T2 length. And I'm not going to itemize every instance right now. So you get this even more condensed list. We can see single tiers, 2 tiers. There's some issues with some of the rod lengths varying right now, but you get the general idea here of how that works. So once we get all of those schedules kind of filtered down and sorted and however we want, we can go to a sheet and we can drop those on a sheet. And this is kind of the default way that it comes in. Move it over here. So there's actually some ways of formatting these schedules as well. So we can, once it's on a sheet, if you double click on the schedule, we can go into our parameters over here and change the appearance of it. This is my personal preference, but I don't like the blank row before the data. And then we can go in and we can change the text type to have a header and a body or something like that, to have it match whatever your BIM standards are for your company, just to have it look a little cleaner as well. So I zipped through that pretty quickly because I wanted to make sure I left some time to answer any questions that anybody had. But like I said before, a lot of what I'm going through here applies to all the different trades. It focused on electrical today, and it focused on sorting blanks, quantifying elements, finding missing elements, and QCing, and then finally sorting that data. The one limitation that the Revit schedules have, as you can see with the conduit fitting schedule here, is we can only sort that down by 4 different parameters. So what that usually means is we have to get a little creative and create some of our own parameters to kind of sort that data down. So like BIMTM utilizes codes and things like that we could utilize to sort the codes down, that we kind of modify some of the families that we utilize to make that more efficient for everybody. I'm going to take a look here to see if there's any questions or anything. So we have 2 different questions. First one is, can a schedule be built to include conduit fittings and straight lengths to find a total run length? The answer is yes. It's probably one of the most confusing things that exists within Revit, but there is a conduit run schedule. It is really confusing. However, Evolve has an add-in that helps with that process. So the answer is yes. I'm not going to go over that one today exactly because that is a bit of a rabbit hole, but it can be done. And then the next one was, are you creating these parameters yourself, or are they built into the Evolve families like submittal verification? That is a mix of both. So if I go look at the electrical equipment schedule, these parameters here come from a BIMTM shared parameter file. The submittal verification is built in. We're piggybacking off of the Evolve template that's provided. But all of these schedules, like the Revit out of the box, doesn't come with a ton of great data. And that's kind of why you either have to develop it yourself or you need to go to a partner like Evolve and kind of jumpstart things and get content that's built well and get templates that work really well so that building these schedules are a breeze. And then the last question I have here is there any way to easily create schedules of equipment sorted by key plan areas or scope boxes? The only, so the short answer to that is no. You have to create, the way you said, the only way I found is to create custom parameters. So typically we do area on level or something along those lines, and then we would put in level 1, area A, and then you can filter down the data from there. Newer versions of Revit, I think 2024 has has a way to filter, might be 2023, yeah, filter by sheet. So when you put this schedule on the sheet, you can actually filter by the elements that are being seen. So the tricky thing with that is if you have multiple different areas on one sheet, it's not going to work very well. And if you have overlap on areas, it might cause issues as well. So probably the safest way to filter down that data would be to have those custom parameters that you mentioned to kind of filter that down. Um, Another question is if I have a custom parameter as part of one family, but not all families, it is my understanding when I run the schedule, the column will be blank. I would have to have all families with the parameter to populate. Is there a way around this? Yeah, again, that's a bit of a rabbit hole, but it really depends on the parameters that you're utilizing. Um, we can create parameters within a project. So I'm not going to manipulate any of these families right now, but I could create a project parameter and just call it test. And I'm going to have it on all electrical equipment. And it's just going to be a yes, no parameter. So it's all the way down here on the bottom. When we go into this electrical equipment schedule, and then go to fields, test is here now. So you can quickly add like this submittal verification. We could add that as a project parameter, or if you had a secondary QC that was required or something like that, you could have somebody go through and like put their initials in here to say that they QC'd this element. And that could be done on the project level without having to manipulate the family at all. Can you click on the RT side of the submittal verification so you can see if it's just a text parameter? I guess I'm not quite sure. Oh, and the type second. Okay. We'll go here. So if I hit edit type, the submittal verification is it's a yes no parameter. It's a checkbox. It is not a text parameter. We had another question here. It says, do you have a method to change title block parameters based on information on the sheet? Change key plan instances in a title block. I do have a method for that. That is, again, a little bit of a rabbit hole where you need to have nested families that are also shared so that you can tap into that data. And then you should be able to schedule those separately. But I can potentially do another follow-up webinar to kind of go through some of these more advanced features and embedding families and things like that, and tapping in the data. Maybe even do one where we're kind of building families together and utilizing them within schedules. For time purposes, though, we only got about 3 minutes left. We can't really dive into that one today. And then somebody just, I think, was kind of just reiterating some of the facts that I covered there, but you can use Evolve's location tool to create schedules for specific areas. So yeah, so they have a custom parameter developed for you to kind of sort that data down a bit more efficiently instead of having to develop custom parameters yourself. That's absolutely correct. I don't see any other questions. Like I said, we got about 2 minutes left. And if there's no other questions, I appreciate everybody for coming and joining me today. And if there's any follow-up questions afterwards, something you didn't get to, feel free to shoot us an email or reach out to me on LinkedIn or something like that. We're happy to answer.
Great. Thank you so much, Jeff. And thanks everyone for being engaged and giving us your questions today. We really appreciate that. One last one. Let's see if we can squeeze it in, Jeff. Can you create length project parameter and set it to conduit length?
No, you cannot, unfortunately. The length, that's a, it's a bit of a complicated explanation, but conduit is a system family, and there's really no way to modify the family to map things together. There might be a way to create like, that's a bit of a rabbit hole. I feel like that's a follow-up question to figure out what you're actually trying to accomplish there. I would just say no.
And the person who submitted that, submit the question anonymously. That's totally cool. If you want to submit it again with your name and email attached, we may be able to follow up with a more in-depth answer.
Absolutely.
All right, well, fantastic. As I said at the beginning of this webinar, this recording will be sent out to all of the registrants. And if for some reason you missed that email, it'll be on the Evolve MEP YouTube channel. So make sure you're following us over there because we're always posting all kinds of helpful feature demos and Revit tips and tricks for you. If you keep up with us on LinkedIn or social media, that's another great place to see the new content that we're posting. So thank you everyone again for coming today. And thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.